What I just realized, muted. This is where we have tech problems, guys. So welcome to another live training. It's going to be Tuesday, September 30th, 7 p.m. here in Medellin, Colombia. Now, if you're watching this live, whether you're on Instagram, you're on the YouTube channel, we have some other streams we're going to be doing pretty soon too, or if you're in the exclusive Facebook community, what I want you to do is comment live below, comment live. And the reason why is because I have all these screens up. This is craziness. I got my, Instagram live right here. I got my Facebook group here. I think YouTube's over here, and then there's people in-house in this webinar too. And if you do want to join in for the actual webinar, because I'm gonna have to turn off the Instagram live pretty soon, it gets kind of long, I'm gonna comment in the actual comments so you guys can join directly on this webinar so you get the replay too, right? Some of you guys are driving, some of you guys are swiping through, you're like, man, what's this dude talking about live? What's he talking about, right? So I'm gonna tell you this, we ain't gonna talk about, Charlie Kirk, we're not talking about Israel, Palestine, none of that nonsense. None of that nonsense. And I'm not saying it's not important. What we're going to talk about today is probably going to be the most important change that's going to happen in the end of 2025 and 2026. And if you do not pay attention, I'm telling you right now, you're going to be left behind. Just like how Bitcoin, right? Crypto, whatever, back in 2015, it was like the coolest thing to get into if you knew about it. And in hindsight, you're like, fuck, I wish I had done that. It's going to be the same thing with this, guys. All right. So if you do not know me, my name is Gam Tekler. I'm founder of Digital Residuals. I'm telling you a little bit of a backstory so you actually know, like, hey, this dude's just not full of crap. It's something I should listen to, and you actually get some value out of this too, right? So for this training, I'm just going to go straight tactical, a few things you need to know, some updates, a Q&A too. So if you guys have questions, make sure you comment it. But again, if you're watching this on Instagram Live, there will not be a replay. So you click that link and you get access to it, right? So basically, the way you want to think about this in 2025 and beyond is there's some massive changes happening. Some of you guys pay attention to the tech going on, right? If you pay attention to even Mark Zuckerberg, what's he say? He's like, I'd rather risk $100 billion risking it, testing all these new AIs than being left behind, because he gets it, because he made that pivotal shift to launch Facebook back then. And he's like, what? Winner takes all. And that's how it is in this industry, guys. It's a rude awakening, but winner takes all. It is what it is. So once you recognize that, that's when you realize, like, okay, all right, I need to spot opportunities and I need to act quick. Whether it's this, whether it's land flipping, whether it's AI arbitrage, I don't care what it is. But when you have an opportunity, you need to act quick, right? So before I get into the lesson, what I want you to do is this. Comment the city and state you're watching this from. So I'm out in Medellin, Colombia. If habla español, you know what I'm talking about over here. I'm not one of the passport bros. Don't worry about it, guys, right? Because we're opening an office over here. I got some properties. I'm going to sign a lease very soon. Got some team members that are being hired. It's going to get pretty wild over here. And if you are looking for a position, you're like, hey, you're trying to find that reason to kind of maybe leave the 9-to-5, leave the police career, leave the firehouse where you're barbecuing all day. You can send me a message or comment job or whatever. And I am looking for skilled people that are ride or die. And the reason why is because the skills you can learn. I can trust me. We could figure it out. I'm a no-brainer. I'm a guy who just came from nothing. But the mentality you cannot ever change. So with that being said, let me just see where you guys are commenting from, because I got comments all over the place. It's brought like a 30-second delay. So I'm seeing Andrew, what's going on, brother? Barrington, Massachusetts, one of the original colonies, like it. Portland. We got Wisconsin over here too, live. Devin, what's going on, brother? Seeing these people in here. Awesome. So with that being said, guys, just to give you guys a little bit of background, just because I know it's some of you guys' first time getting on one of these live trainings. Obviously came from, blue collar backgrounds, zero to hero type deal where, parents are immigrants, came from a war torn country. You guys have probably not even heard of it. Some small little key country in Africa. And so, I bring this up because I was actually just talking to a good friend of mine on the phone a little earlier, doing very well. And we were talking about like history, law enforcement, all that stuff. And it was just kind of like, you're talking about these stories. And I'm about to drop some bombshells on you guys. Okay. So I say this because, growing up, I was just kind of like, something don't seem right. Like this whole work 30 years, you retire, maybe you have a savings account, you have this 401k, 457b, whatever, an IRA, you have a whole life insurance, whatever the new thing is. It just didn't make sense. I was like, because I know that people that, maybe they're born into like a better financial situation, they're not thinking about the same thing. They're not thinking like the scarcity mentality of holding on. It's more cash flow. It's always cash flow. Like, how much can I generate? And it's what we're taught to go against. In the normal K through 12 system, doesn't matter where you're at, you're taught to just work. Don't be different. Get in line. It's kind of like when I joined the Marines. It's just like, hey, it's like everybody's green. You might be a darker green, you might be a lighter green, but we still the United States Marine Corps. So I bring that up for a reason. Getting out of high school very years ago, when I had my afro back then, right? So, getting into high school is just like, this doesn't make sense. Going to college, I'm going to pay 40 grand a year minimum for a tuition. And then maybe I get a job that pays me like 60, maybe $100,000 a year because I was in the Bay Area, California. And it just didn't make sense. And I was like, I must be crazy. How many of you guys ever been in that position where you're just like, fuck, I've got to be crazy. This doesn't make sense. Comment crazy below. Comment crazy. And the reason why is just because, no matter what position you're in, you can be an accredited investor, you can have a business running. We're all on the same page. We're all on the same page of like, something doesn't seem right and I need to find this next investment opportunity. So back then it was just like, okay, cool. Like, I know this isn't for me. So, first thing I did, turned 18, joined the United States Marine Corps. Reason why was because I just knew it was the hardest. I didn't know anything about the military. I'm like, fuck it. This seems like the hardest branch. They got a cool uniform. All these guys look cool too. Ended up in there. So, it sounds like all rosy dozy after that, right? But what ended up happening was you kind of have that anxiety, like you're not doing enough. And some of you guys probably have that right now. I get that all the time to this day. So you have that anxiety where you're just not doing enough. And so basically what ends up happening is just like, man, I'm split between multiple ways. Do I do this, what society's telling me? Do I do this, what maybe my family's telling me? Do I do this where I kind of have an idea of, or is there like some unknown thing? It's kind of like you're driving down a highway and it's foggy. And you're like, man, my high beam's got to go off. I got to go low. And you still can't see in front of you. You know the destination that you want to get to, which is what we call our goal, our mission, or whatever. But what ends up happening is you're just like, I don't really know how to get there. And I feel a little uncomfortable. Well, I'm telling you right now, that's normal. To this day, like 7 figures later, you're just like, this is very normal. So basically, at that point, I said, okay, something's got to give. Ended up in a career in law enforcement. There's a lot of things that happen in between, whatever. So you're thinking like, lo and behold, you have a career that's paying you high 6 figures, things are well, uniform, respected, etc. But just things weren't working out. And what I mean by that, very specifically, it's actually very simple. I thought to myself, man, I'm looking around, I was like, people just ain't happy over here. And it was just like negative and toxic environment. And it was one of those things where it's like a domestic violence situation. And I can speak from authority. You know why? Because I've investigated hundreds of these. And it was just like, I can't leave. It feels good, but I don't want to stay. And some of you guys, like I mentioned, are probably in the same boat right now. It's just like, man, it's just good enough, but I can't leave because I don't have that next thing. So we're going to talk about that today. Right? So me specifically, what I'm going to refer to is called crypto payment processing. This is just one vehicle, but ultimately don't miss the forest for the trees. What we're talking about is a concept, which is usually quiet quitting away from your position. You're quiet quitting, meaning that you're saying, you know what? I know this doesn't work out. Like I know I can see the writing on the wall. I'm just going to tolerate it until I pivot into something else that makes sense. And again, it doesn't have to be this. It could be whatever. It could be a vending machine business for all I care. But essentially, it's the exact same process that goes step by step, right? So, at this point, I'm just like, all right, I got to figure something out, right? I'm cash flow heavy, meaning I'm just saving up because I'm working all the time. I was living in the hood, driving an old pickup truck, right? That got like, it was like 22 miles per gallon. My insurance was like $40 a month. I was like, this is cool. It's good enough. But what happens when I want to level up? What happens when I want to elevate? Well, I know I'm just going to be the bottom rung of that next pole. So it's like, I got to start planning ahead. And this is, I like to call it the seasonal learning, where you're trying to like learn that skill. You're trying to learn the thing that's going to catapult you to the next level. You're in this weird spot. And it's the exact same thing in business. I'm telling you from, somebody that's run multi-million-dollar businesses, somebody that's ran like a very small businesses that were doing like $1,000 a month. It's the exact same thing. The only difference is there's just more repetition of the same thing. You end up having to be in this weird gray area. So like your old self is right here and your new self is right here. And you're just like, you're right here and you're caught in between. You have your old group of friends, you have your old group of like business partners, maybe coworkers, employees, whatever. You have that group of people right here and you have that new version you're trying to get to, but you're just like, I don't know how to get there. So you're trying to find that vehicle, you're trying to find that mindset. Well, I'm going to tell you a secret right now. Usually, it's actually not the business. When you go from $0 to $100,000, and you go from $100,000 to $500,000, and you go from $500,000 to $2, $3, $4, $5 million, and I'm not even talking about a year, I'm talking about in a month. Immediately you recognize it's actually not the business itself. It's typically you, numero uno. Because what ends up happening is you start pointing that finger. right? And there's a saying that I like. I got it from law enforcement. And it's like, hey, whenever you point your finger at something, there's three fingers pointing right back at you. And it comes down to extreme accountability. And so I say this because business is just a game. Alex Hormozy, very popular business influencer, brings this up all the time. He says it's just a game. And I was in my patrol car. This is years ago. In my patrol car, listening to this dude in a tank top. I have some dude in the back seat sweating. Guy just did a shooting, and I'm listening to like a business podcast on the way to the jail, right? Like double homicide, and we're just jamming out, trying to figure out like what these lead indicators are and all that. Didn't know anything. And so what you start realizing why is like it's a game, but it's a game of mastering yourself. Because what ends up happening is you try to find these different tricks. You try to find these little hacks. They work short term. It's kind of like putting tape around your plug, but eventually it starts to unravel. So the real game to take you from whatever situation you're at, you might be capped. Your top line revenue might be at like $1 million a year. And it's like, dang, man, how do I get past 100K a month? Or you might just say, man, I'm just trying to figure out like, what's that one thing I need to get into? And you're just trying all these things. But here's the secret. It has to not work for it to work. And it's extremely uncomfortable. It's like one of the worst feelings. Like if you've had anxiety in business, your anxiety level is going to go through the roof. And you have what we call uncertainty. You have people around you that don't believe in you. They say they do, but they don't really believe in you. They believe in the personal version of you, like the one they're comfortable with, but they don't see the vision that you see also. So it's important at this stage specifically that you have just relentlessness. You have to be absolutely relentless in what you do. And at a certain point, you're going to be seen as an idiot. You're going to be seen as an outlier. You're going to be seen as cocky, is what they like to call it. But you have to be so steadfast in your mission and saying, fuck it, I'm getting out of here. I don't care about any of you guys. And you want to know the crazy part? The crazy part is once it starts to work out, that's when people start to realize. That's when people are like, oh, yeah, I always believed in you, whatever. And it's nothing personal. It is what it is. It's just business, guys. Don't take it offensive. Like, people are going to be normal. But that's when the tides start to turn. You get that one success, then you get the next success, and then the momentum starts to happen. So in business, this is the way I like to think of things. There's three main stages, right? So you comment 3, it's going to timestamp, and you'll get a copy of the recording from this point. So the first stage, I like to say, is what we call the binary stage, right? It's going to be the binary stage. I'm going to comment this on Instagram too, so you guys can see it, but this is going to be the binary stage. And this is the yes or no. And what I mean by that is like, you're just trying to figure out to see if it works. You just want proof of concept. You just want that first win. It could be $1. It could be the fact that you got some ATM machine that just arrived and you're like, oh, this feels real. What this is when you're like, oh, this is actually real. This is actually something that I could potentially do. But you know what happens at this point? Once you get past that binary stage, which is yes or no, does this work? You get a sudden massive rush of anxiety. Again, you guys keep noticing I'm saying the same word, anxiety. And this isn't like some mental health awareness thing. This is like telling you like the stages you're going to go through as you become more successful. So you get this massive sense of anxiety. And the anxiety at this point is saying like, oh, this is possible, but is it possible for me? This happens all the time, guys. Like from going from like $0 to $100,000, opening a retail storefront in San Francisco, everything, doing a rental car business. It's like, is this for me? The only way you're going to know is if you actually take that step forward. Because the difference is what we call speed in business. If you notice, one of the more common things among very successful people is they operate very quickly. Once you're paying attention to what they're doing, all of a sudden, if you don't pay attention for a week, you're like, what? You're doing this now? And it's the same thing across the board, whether it's a massive corporation where you actually have a C-level executive saying, hey, this is what we're doing next week, or it's some small business, some ice cream shop, and you're like, man, they have a new flavor or whatever. You're always operating with urgency. Because here's the thing. We end up having rhythms. As a human in general, what we need is patterns. We need repetition. And so when that's, I guess you say like broken, or when that's, I guess, circumvented, or there's like some ripple, like that earthquake happens, you get this massive anxiety. Well, here's the thing. If that ripple happens consistently, that uneasiness happens consistently, what ends up happening is you have a new rhythm. The new rhythm is the uncertainty. The new rhythm is the lack of consistency. And it's counterintuitive. It's craziness, but it's the exact same thing across business. And if you talk to any successful business person, not the ones sometimes on social media saying, hey, I'm doing this or that, because we know social media is a lie most of the time. Well, if you talk to the people that you're like, no, that guy's legit, they say the exact same thing. They operate, number one, with urgency, they operate with speed, and they operate with absolute certainty. I'm going to give you guys an example. Elon Musk. How many of you guys know Elon Musk? Of course you do, right? In the news all the time. So right now, Tesla is just, it's a company that's just established. Everybody knows it's Tesla cars. It's like Honda Civic or Toyota Camry, right? Years ago, it wasn't the case. In fact, it was majority naysayers. It was people saying, no, electric vehicles, you're idiot. There's not enough power. There's there's mechanical issues, etc. And the man had absolute relentlessness to keep moving forward. So until finally, with some government cuts and all that, it got to the point where you start seeing Teslas everywhere. Now you fast forward to what? I want to take a rocket. I want to take us to Mars. It sounds crazy until finally one of the rockets land. But here's the crazy part. That's still the binary. That's that yes, no phase. Does it work? How many explosions, how many embarrassing moments did it take for that to actually happen? It was a lot. Most of them that we didn't even pay attention to. How many sleepless nights? How many people saying you're an idiot, you're spending money, etc. And you fast forward to this point and it's like, oh yeah, rockets can land. That's normal. So I say this because once you get past that binary phase, which is just yes or no, that's when the real game starts to happen. Right now, most people are just in that binary phase. They're just like, I got to figure it out. I don't know what it is. I don't know if I'm playing the right game. I don't know if I'm in the right business. I'm with the right people, but I got to figure it out. And if you're in a space like this right now, I'm telling you right now, it's okay. It's okay. That uneasiness, that frustration, the annoyance, maybe like you feel angry sometimes when you wake up or people are talking, you're like, what are they talking about? I don't want to do what you're doing. That is okay. That's normal. That is the character trait. That is the indicator, as we call it, or the probable cause, right? Or the elements in law enforcement of this successful trait, how you're going to be successful. So that's going to be the binary phase. That's yes or no. That is just the basics to get into the business. Next, you end up going into what I call the quantity phase, right? I'm going to comment this also for you. So the quantity phase, essentially what this is you figured out something that works, okay? You finally figured out something that works and you're like, I just need more volume of the same thing. This is invigorating. Like if I'm not advocating to do drugs, but if you've done like any drugs or anything, that feeling times like 1,000. Any like feeling of like maybe you got married or like, that ecstasy feeling, it's 1,000 times that. And the reason why is because you finally, quote unquote, figured it out. At this point, you're like, man, I might have something here. And some of you guys, it's boring businesses. You might have started an ATM business. Maybe you started a traditional credit card processing business, a vending machine. Maybe you have a little hustle that you're like, hey, I make chocolate chip cookies. I actually contracted with this company. Now Delta wants a contract with me. But you finally figured out the one thing and you're like, all right, I just got to do more of it. So at this phase, usually it's typically about like $100,000 to maybe like $600,000 a month. What ends up happening is you're saying, okay, I just need to do more of the same thing. That's it. Nothing needs to change. But here's the kicker. Here's the kicker that you're going to laugh. This is when you end up usually failing. And the reason why, you're probably like, I would have failed at the binary stage again. I'm like, I didn't even figure it out. What ends up happening is you get unrational, like this lack of rational confidence. So you start trying to change things. So all of a sudden you're like, okay, cool, we should do this now and this and this and this, when you should have just stuck to the thing that works. And then things start to not work and you really have that anxiety that kicks in. So I say this specifically because ultimately, once you're at this phase, and a lot of you guys watching right now, you might leave in a second, you're going to hit this phase, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You look back to this day, September 30th, and it's like, oh, I know what this guy was talking about, right? So quick poll. How many of you guys, I want you to comment binary, which is, a little more complicated word, binary if you're at that beginning stage, right? Just comment beginner. If you're at that beginner stage where you're like, okay, I'm just trying to figure it out. I'm trying to find like that one thing that works. I'm just trying to I don't know what it is, but I know I'm going to figure it out. And if you're past that phase, maybe you figured something out. You don't want to say what it is, right? It's competition. But what I want you to do is comment action. Comment action for that point where like, no, I figured it out and I just need to get more repetitions of it. Because most people are typically in that beginner phase. But sometimes you might actually get to that point where it's like, okay, cool, I'm at the action phase too, right? So Antoine, you got the action phase. Devin, same thing. Been there, done that. Yeah, a lot of business owners will say the same thing. Very, very interesting, right? So, I say this specifically because once you get to this phase where like it's momentum, you think things are okay. But this is the point where you really can get to scale. You can really start generating serious revenue for yourself, your family, whatever your mission is, your goal. And what ends up happening is this is when you start to optimize. Okay. So I call this the optimization phase. And there's the 3 phases. Again, there's the binary phase, which is the beginner stage where you're just trying to figure out what it is that you want to do. And then from there, you're going to get into what I say the quantity phase. So basically it's scaling where you're just trying to do more repetitions of the same thing. And then from there, you get to what we call the optimization phase. And I'm telling you from experience, this is if you're trying to go from 0 to 100,000 in a year, like in revenue. And some of you guys are probably like 6 figures in a year. That's crazy. Well, now you start talking about 6 figures in a month and 6 figures in a day. And you realize, oh, okay, those are baby numbers. So that's when you start going into the optimization phase. And let's talk about this for a second. So how many of you guys have, I presume like everyone watching this like works out a little bit, right? Maybe you got to that next phase. So whenever you're exercising, usually what ends up happening is, you get this sudden burst, right? You go to the gym like a few times, you feel absolutely phenomenal. Then you have like this lag time and then you start doing more repetitions. Then all of a sudden there's that next burst and then you're at that plateau. You're at that plateau, whether it's you can push more weights, you've dropped weight or whatever it is. And then you're like, damn, I can't get past that plateau. This is actually when a lot of people quit. And you're probably thinking like, why would you quit at this point? But what ends up happening is you have a lack of limiting beliefs. And what I mean by that is like, you just don't believe in yourself. And it's this crazy thing. You probably think to yourself like, no, you're wrong. Like I absolutely believe in myself, but you really don't because your old self starts pulling yourself back. It starts pulling Antoine back. It starts pulling Barbarian 50 back or Ethio official back. And you start pulling yourself back to the level of comfort. Because remember what I mentioned about rhythm, where you're just trying to get that routine going? It gets very uncomfortable to get to the next level because you have to have a new rhythm. So this is going to be the most pivotal phase of your business journey. And the reason why is because this is when you make it or break it. You're either going to be a has-been talking about what you used to do back in the day, or you're going to be the person that's writing that story. You're authoring the story saying, okay, cool, this is what we're going to do. And if you get past this phase, this is when you have that quote unquote blue check mark before it was, something you buy. You have the blue check mark that's the person you talk about. And it's a very simple 3 phase. What ends up happening is as you have more experience, those 3 phases happen very quickly. And that's when you can see people, they start business 1, then they do well because that takes a long time to figure out those skills. And then you start business 2, business 3, and they're like, damn, this person has like 3 or 4 businesses or like investments and they're always doing well. And it feels like it's magic, but it's not. Because what you've mastered is the number 1 skill. And that number 1 skill is developing yourself. Because throughout this entire process, what you're going to learn is a few different things. Number 1, absolute self-confidence. Because again, no one's going to believe in you. You might have the craziest vision. People are like, there's that one person until you get past that binary phase and it works one time. They're like, okay, cool. But that's a side note. It's not going to happen again. Then you do it again and again and again. Then they look back a second and you're like, whoa, wait a second. That person really has a business. Once you get past the phase of optimization, I'm not going to say it's autopilot, but you really start to enjoy the fruits of your labor. So what I want to do, guys, is actually take it a step back and we're going to go back into the binary phase. We're going to talk about the simple basics of this business specifically, if it's something that you're interested in. And I'm going to talk about step by step exactly why. Number 1, society's shifting, I'll put it this way, but big banks will be pivoting to this very, very soon. And you're just going to say, I saw this random guy on Instagram, on YouTube, on a Facebook group, and he was mentioning this a little while back. And boom, just like that, there's this massive shift that happens, right? So if you're excited, if it's your first time, you're like, dude, let's rock, let's get right to it so I can give you guys some actionable steps. What I want you to do is comment live below. Comment live so we can get this bad boy going, guys, right? Because as you know, like I get pumped up when I talk about business in general. Like it doesn't matter what business you're talking about, we can get on the phone for hours because I've been through the ringer, guys. I slept in my car for months, taking showers at the gym, the most embarrassing time of my life. So now we talk about numbers and stuff. It's easy stuff over here, right? So with that being said, I want to give you guys a step-by-step breakdown, basics of when it comes down to what we call crypto payment processing, right? So to give you guys a little bit of background, right? If you haven't done any research or anything within crypto, not a big deal, right? Most people are saying, buy this, buy that. digital currency, whatever, right? That's just blood on the streets. Ignore them. What you want to focus on is like, all right, how can I create the most cash flow with an opportunity? That's it. Ignore everybody else saying like these massive investments you should invest in. Like usually they're not even, they're saying, hey, do as I do, not as I say. Because when you ask them like, hey, show me the receipts, like, oh, I actually didn't take action. They're just telling you what to do for views. So when it comes down to this business specifically, the way you want to think about it is like this. Crypto's here to stay, right? Years ago, you're like, hey, it's a scam, it's going to zero, naysayers, etc. Unfortunately, and fortunate at the same time, right? We have the right president that came in and said, yep, this is what we're doing. All of a sudden on a federal level, it's saying, yep, this is what we're doing. And you start seeing the daisy chain, the dominoes start to fall in place. And then when you start realizing, you're like, wait, because people did 180s, right? Certain banks, they're like, oh yeah, it's a scam. And then all of a sudden you're like, they have the biggest investments. You're like, wait a second, I thought you told me not to do this. And you realize, oh, it's just to, position yourself to make the most money. Again, it's business. It is what it is. So we're going to figure out how not to get the whole pie, but how you can get a little small piece of the pie that is right now. Okay. So as more and more people get involved in crypto, and it doesn't matter what, it can be, YouTube channels, whatever, but as they start buying more and more, what ends up happening is you start having this shift. And the shift is basically people saying, okay, this is something new. It's very uncomfortable, but I think it's here to stay and I'm going to get involved, right? The reason why this matters is it's a benefit for you because when it comes down to it, you're basically being the pickaxe, the shovel during a gold rush. Everyone's moving over to California to get some gold, right? And you're like, well, wait a second. Instead of me chasing everybody else, because maybe I'm not the fastest, not the best, what if I'm just in the middle and I get my little piece? And that's what I focus on. And the reason I say this is because I fell for the trap. I fell for the trap of what? Trap was like, oh, I'm just going to listen to all these people's advice. I'm going to try this now. I'm going to try this. I'm going to try this Amazon store, this e-commerce investment, this trading, like all these different little hacks, when really I should have just taken a step back and looked at what the real business people were doing. And the real business people were always focusing on cash flow. It was never just, hey, let's just do more actions. It's just like, all right, how can I leverage my time to have the most decisive action? Once you make that shift, what you realize is, number one, you stop listening to other people's opinions, right? And it might sound bad, but like when your friends call, your family call, you start saying no more often because you realize there's a distraction from the main thing, which is what you know to be true. And if you're in any type of religion, it's the same thing. Somebody say your religion is wrong, like, nope, I have utmost faith. Well, business ends up turning into that religion. So I say this because once you realize something's here to stay, you start looking at things in a different way. It's like, I don't want to own the entire thing. I just want to figure out how I can profit off of this. So with crypto payment processing, the way you want to think about this is like this. Whenever you go to a business and you pay with your credit card, your debit card, Apple Pay, whatever it is, even cash, actually everything other than cash, but any type of payments, there's somebody in the middle. It's not just a simple like, hey, here's my Chase card, here's my Bank of America card. No, there's actually like multiple layers along the way. It's the craziest thing. It's almost like an MLM, right? So there's like the bank, there's what we call the ISO, there's a payment acquirer, there's an agent, there's a sponsoring bank, and then you might have like a payment service provider. There's like 9 different levels. Every single person is making a penny or a percentage or whatever, which may not seem like a lot, but then when you start thinking about it, you're like, okay, volume wise, if there's 1,000 transactions and that person makes 1 penny and they do absolutely nothing, you're like, okay, they made this much a second day, a third day, a fourth day. And then a month later, and a year later, you start realizing like, wow, that is like a very profitable business. In the industry itself is a little over $140 billion, just profit. Whenever you swipe your card for whatever it is, that Starbucks, the cold brew, whatever, somehow, some way, someone along the way is making some money, right? That's the original industry. That is payment processing. It's been around. You can Google it if you want, or message me for any questions. Okay. So now you start talking about the new industry that's emerging, right? A lot of us have been paying attention to what we call stablecoins, right? You have like USDC, USDT, whatever, right? There's all these different stablecoins. Well, the reason why this is such a big deal that no one's even talking about, it's absolute bonkers. What's happening is this, right? While everyone's so hyped about crypto, there's massive adoption happening with what we call stablecoins. And I'm going to challenge you guys to Google this right after this because this live is going to be over in about 10 minutes. It's called the Genius Act, right? It's called the Genius Act. I'm going to comment it below so you guys see this also. Just look into this. And essentially, what ended up happening is this. A lot of people were making money. A lot of geeks, a lot of get-ems were, in the patrol car, nighttime, East Oakland. And I'm just like on my iPad, like doing all this crypto stuff 10 years ago, right? If you're like, what are you doing, man? You're on Netflix? Like, no, like you don't get it. There's just crazy stuff happening right now. So it got to the point where we're like, whoa, wait a second. How are you making this much money? That doesn't make as much sense. So, multiple things happen, but essentially we got to a point where we said, okay, cool. We have this, what we call digital dollar. And for the digital dollar to be representing the US, how do we not have a say? That makes no sense. Like literally, it has nothing to do with the US, but it says US dollar coin. So whatever happened behind closed doors, it got to a point where they said, okay, cool. This is the regulation. If you're going to represent the US and say, hey, you have a stable coin, you're saying this represents a dollar, you have to actually have it backed by the US. So a lot of people disagree with this, agree. I could care less. We're just talking about money here, right? So you have to start thinking about what this actually means for you. So if that's the case, and now every single person, you're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars across the world, they have these stable coins. What do they use to transfer back and forth with crypto? And now it actually has to be backed by the US dollar or some type of asset like a treasury bond or whatever. Well, what ends up happening is now every single person across the world owns a little bit about the US. They own a little piece of the US debt, right? So we just transferred over billions of dollars to Nigeria, South Korea, China, whatever. It doesn't matter where it's at. So you're probably asking, like, I'm like, what's the point? Like, why does this even matter? Well, the reason why this matters is you have to think about it like this. If we have transitioned, we said, hey, we went from, the gold standard, if you want to look into this, where, $1 US was backed by gold. Then we went to what we call the petrodollar, where it means everybody who buys oil, Saudi Arabia or whatever, it has to be denoted in US dollars, which, obviously has caused a lot of wars, if you noticed. Well, now we've moved into the digital dollar. And no one's paying attention because the old mentality of like save, I'm going to have my pension, I'm going to have this, etc. You start realizing why that is old. That's like having a paper check in your hands. You're like, dude, like this is like before we started using Zoom and like video calls in 2019 and 2020. So the reason why this is important for you is because this massive shift is happening, whether you like it or not, right? It's not talked about as much. There's certain announcements that happen behind the scenes and most people don't really pay attention, but because we're so caught up in all the nonsense, the frenzy, the wars, the death, the destruction, like it's painful sometimes. But when you follow the money, you start realizing like, okay, we're having the shift. Who's profiting the most? Well, then you have to ask yourself this. If we're moving into this and people are saying, I want to own more crypto, and banks are saying, yes, we're going to start offering our own stablecoins. That's what's happening, right? And it's all being supported by the US of A. Then you're like, okay, well, what's the next thing that has to happen? Well, there needs to be a way for this person that has $500 to actually pay. And it's not through Visa and MasterCard because it's completely different. So then you ask yourself, well, like, who's the one doing that? And then you realize why no one is actually doing that. And you wonder like, hey, the excitement, like the passion I speak about this is because it's the pivot that's happening. As much as I love crypto, I was involved back in 2015. I always said, hey guys, buy some Bitcoin. This is probably going to be the biggest opportunity. And the banks agree. You want to know the reason why I say that? Just Google crypto payments. That's it. Just Google it. See what pops up. See what doesn't pop up. And you realize, wait a second, how is nothing popping up for this? Then go on YouTube and you're going to start seeing a lot of investment firms saying, we're back in this company. We're back in this company. We're back in this company. So I'm going to tell you something right now. I'm not the smartest person in the room, but what I do know is this. There are a lot of people that are paid very high price salaries to make these decisions, to do research, to think, to strategize. So knowing that that's actually happening, you ask yourself, look, how do I get involved? And that's how I'm going to break down step by step what you need to do to take action on your own right now, right? So if you want the beginner steps, because I do have a PDF guide that breaks this down also, I want you to comment PDF below, comment PDF. One of my team members, my assistants on the Instagram also send you a message. And if you're watching this on Instagram, the stream never replays. So make sure you send me a message so I can actually send you this guide too, okay? So the basics are this, guys. There's 4 foundations that you need to actually start this business, okay? It's actually much simpler than you think because, coming from a Marine Corps, law enforcement background, sometimes you got to dumb things down, especially with violence. So foundationally, first pillar that you want to follow is actually going to be forming a business entity and getting a business bank account. So I'm not going to belong on this point specifically, but whether you do this business or not, if you're not taking advantage of forming some type of business and going that route, you're just missing out. You're literally paying the government more money than you have to. I'm just telling you right now, I'm not a tax advisor, but I'm telling you right now, if you do not form a business and do something, I guarantee you, you will spend more money in taxes than you would have if you didn't. So you might as well save the money. If you're working a 9 to 5 right now and you don't have an idea, form an LLC, figure it out. Okay. So you want to form a business. And the reason why I say this is because a lot of it comes down to protection. Unfortunately, we live in a society where we like to sue. And so you want to structure things appropriately, because if you've worked, if you've done your due diligence, if like you've saved up and all of a sudden you start a business and there's an issue, well, then when you get sued, they might come after your stuff. And this happened to me in law enforcement. They sue left and right. You tie your shoe wrong, they're like, oh yeah, you get the lawsuit summons, and you get used to it because you're like, oh, whatever, I got to go to court. But you don't want to go through that experience. So I always say foundation number one, or pillar number one, is going to be that business formation. So pillar number two is actually going to be the back end. So the back end, not as sexy, but the way you want to think about this, very simple, is that there has to be a way for the transaction to happen. And that's where you come in. You partner with local businesses. And then from there, what you actually do is you help them accept crypto payments. You get a percentage, just like the normal payment processing industry. So there has to be that back end processor, because you'd ask yourself like, well, okay, person comes in with crypto, merchants here, how does it like go across, right? So the way that actually works is a few different ways. The old school way is like they give you like an address and then you send it. It's not scalable, it's antiquated. And the reason why is because think about if you're in line, there's 5 people in line and they're like trying to copy and paste this like 26-digit letters and numbers. They get one wrong and all of a sudden the money's gone, right? So it doesn't make sense. Then the other aspect of this is what? Well, as a business owner, are you going to trust your employee? What if they use their own address? Like they give the customer their own bank account. You can't trust that if you're not working. So it doesn't make sense. That's why when you go to normal businesses, there's always one point of sale system. It's not some random thing. It's like, no, this is the business owns it. No one touches it. It's the exact same thing with this. So you have to ask yourselves like, okay, well, how does that happen then? Because the traditional way doesn't work. There is no necessary way. Well, that's where you come in. So essentially you partner with a backend processor. And what ends up happening is they decide, okay, cool. This item is going to be $75. So the customer is presented with a device, and I have a device here somewhere, but a device or software or whatever, and it says, hey, what type of crypto do you want to pay in? So whatever it is, you got XRP Army, you got USDC, it doesn't matter what it is. Then what ends up happening is it automatically calculates what needs to happen. And this seems like really simple, and it is, and that's the reason why you're able to scale this so fast. So it tells what type of crypto you want to do. You scan a QR code, just like if you're used to Apple Pay where you scan the phone, it's the exact same thing. You scan a QR code and automatically the customer sends it, just like Apple Pay where you do your Face ID, the exact same thing. And within like 10 to about 20 seconds nowadays, it says transaction confirmed, just like how it would say payment complete, and that's it. So the next logical question you should be asking is what? Well, what about the merchant? They don't want crypto. Like, what if they got to pay their employees' expenses? What if they got to buy more inventory? They got to get food. There's all these thin margins. What about tips and all that? We got you covered. So what ends up happening is it automatically converts back to their currency. And here's the best part. I said currency for a reason. I didn't say dollars. This works internationally. So you're probably wondering like, man, again, what you doing out in Medellin, man? Una noche de Medellin. It's like, it's not partying, guys. It's not just cigars all night and the Havana shirts, okay? What it is this is an international opportunity, because when you break down the concept, you're like, okay, well, crypto I can send anywhere. This concept is very simple. You can apply it anywhere. Why are you stuck to the US? So if you've been looking for that opportunity, we're like, man, I just want to get out the US. I want to live in Bali. I want to like, the normal influencer spots for you, because it's the exact same concept. If you're at a store in Norway and you buy, a $200 shirt, you pay with crypto and it pays them in whatever their local currency is. You go to South Korea, you go to Australia, it doesn't matter. It's the exact same thing. So you start realizing, you kind of open up like your mindset of like, wait a second, I could really scale this up to a lot of different countries. But I want to bring you back down to reality, to this Instagram Live. When it comes down to it, we always need to start small. There's an analogy that I use, and to this day, it always works. Basically, think about it like this. You are looking down a telescope and you're like, I want to go in this direction. You're like, you're Elon Musk, you're looking at Mars and you're saying, this is where I'm going to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now, whatever. And it gets exciting. You feel good. You're feeling like pumped up. You're like, fuck yeah, this is what I'm going to do. Right. But then you wake up, your alarm clock goes up and you wake up. Right. So that's the analogy of like, you see where you want to be. That's the mission. That's the goal. But when you take a step back from the actual telescope, you look to your left, you look to your right, and you realize, oh man, I still got all these action steps. That's the analogy with this. You can scale it international. That's phenomenal. But let's be realistic. We still need to get our first dollar, that binary yes or no in this business. So what you end up doing is you start local. You talk to local business owners and you say, well, how many businesses are around me that don't accept this payment option? And I have an answer that's probably universal across the US, and it's probably going to be less than what fit on your hand. You can probably count the amount of businesses that you've been to that have like a sticker that says, hey, we accept cryptocurrency. So you're able to go to that business owner and just say, like, hey, why aren't you accepting crypto payments? And they're probably going to say a variation of like, well, I didn't know, I didn't think about it, I didn't do this, whatever, it doesn't matter. So now you're providing a solution. You're not even selling them, you're literally helping them accept more money for their business. So the kicker is this, right? The most common question I get from people that are in the space, like, well, why don't I just like, go to Square or like PayPal or this or that? It's like, well, why wouldn't you? Why aren't they going to these businesses? Because it's not worth their time. They're focused on online businesses. They're not trying to have individuals on Instagram Live or Facebook Live or whatever do this because it costs a lot of money to hire the people to train them, et cetera. So what ends up happening is we outsource. We outsource just like subcontracting in like construction. You outsource to local companies, and that's where you come in as that local company partner with the businesses. So you talk to business number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, and all of a sudden you take so much action. You look in the rear view mirror and like, man, I really got pretty far with this. And it happens pretty quickly. So that's gonna be pillar number 2, which is what? Getting that back-end processor. Then the third thing, which is the most important aspect of this business, guys. If you take anything away from this, pay attention to this. You got to find the right locations, okay? So I remember I was talking to somebody the other day and they were mentioning like, I'm just gonna do this, this, and this. I'm like, yeah, that'll work, but will it really work the best right now? I'm like, what do you mean? I was like, well, yeah, you can go to like the ice cream shop and this and this and this. And like, but it's like, if the company just opened, it's a brand new store, it's a barber shop, and they don't have any customers, what's the likelihood they're even going to do anything? You might feel that good, like feeling of like, oh, I got a location, all that. But when it comes down to it, it's like, how much are you really going to generate? So what you want to do is target the right type of businesses, right? So what I found, best ones right now are, and if you probably want to write this down because there's no replay, some of the best businesses, number 1, hands down, like jewelry stores. And the reason why is because you get like a $10,000 Omega, you pay $400, $1,000, 24 karat, whatever. What ends up happening is they take a lot of risk because of credit card payments, you can do chargebacks, et cetera. And then you have a lot of people that they made a lot of money in crypto. They bought Haktua coin and they made like, $1,000. So it's not really a big deal. It's almost like the lottery. So it's money to spend. An analogy I got, this is from somebody also, a really good business owner who's talking to me about this. He's like, man, this makes sense. Get him. It's like, what do you mean? It was like, well, imagine you're at this transmission shop and you got to get your car fixed and it's a little more than you thought. Are you going to say, well, I'm not going to do it? Or are you going to say, you know what? I got this extra like $800 in crypto. I might as well use that too. It's probably going to be the latter. So it's the exact same thing with this. It comes down to times of opportunity. So you usually look at jewelry stores, high ticket businesses, smoke shops. And the reason why for these are they're usually high risk, certain places that sell certain CBD products. You have e-commerce, gambling, ammunition stores, firearm stores, like all these different businesses that are available to you. And the best part about this is what you don't want to do is compete with credit card processing. And the reason why is because you're just adding more complexity to yourself. Because think about it like this, right? And usually rookies in business, and I was that person like not too long ago, you just try to do everything at once and you end up failing with everything. But once you realize you hyper focus and you just do one thing really well, that's when you really scale. When you think about Apple, they were just doing computers really well. They invested a lot, et cetera. Then they got into phones, and then became big things. Any company that does really well into something like NVIDIA, for example, which is like the hottest company of this year, is what? All they did was focus on what? Their equipment, like what they were actually going to produce, and they got really good at it. So there's no competition. So the reason why you don't want to compete with like traditional payment processing is because at the end of the day, you're just entering into a saturated market. And I'm not saying saturated like you're not going to be successful. What I'm saying is you're entering into a market with thousands and thousands and thousands of people. Everybody and their mama knows somebody that did that. It's like selling life insurance or solar, right? Everybody's into it. It's like the worst time to start because you will be successful. It's just going to take a little more effort to be successful. I don't know about you, but I'm a little lazy sometimes. I want to just be really efficient with my time. And nowadays, I'm just trying to make sure like I have a really good time, not a long time. So I try to find like the most decisive, the most like efficient things I can do. Okay. So typically what you want to do, like I said, is partner with specific businesses to start. You can expand to all these other businesses, but from there, what you actually want to do is not compete. But here's the kicker, guys. All right. I'm gonna tell you a little secret. Coming from the space of, thousands of clients, probably tens of thousands of businesses across the US, Canada, Mexico. Here's what you do, right? Because it comes down to a networking game. Your network equals your net worth. Okay. So what ends up happening is we try to speed through everything and we end up failing. What you actually want to do is be very strategic, deliberate, or, really good friend of mine used this word and I never forgot it. You want to have finesse. Comment finesse below, comment finesse. And you guys probably know that person in your life. They're like, man, that person's smooth. It's like Shaft, right? Smooth operator, side A playing in the background. Well, what it is this. It's actually very simple. Basically, what ends up happening is you get to a point where you're like, oh, I don't need to speed through this. If I actually just become like really efficient in the way I do this, I'm going to be really successful. So you sign up all these businesses, all these merchants, right? The jewelry store, Jamal, Jessica, whatever, at these businesses. And then from there, on the back end, what you do is you reapproach them a month later or 2 months later, and you say, yo, I'm probably not going to say that at like, certain, like the golf course, right? But like, hey, how are things going? Things are going well. Did this. Awesome. You need anything else from me? No. Quick question. Who does X, Y, and Z for you? And it might be the vending machine there. It might be the ATM. It might be the credit card processing. You say, well, would it help if you just consolidated it and made it easier and I just took care of it for you? And you just open the door to a second business within the same business. So all of a sudden, that same action, that finesse that you operated with is worth double the revenue in the same business. And you didn't do any extra work. And the reason why is because you took the time, you built the relationship, you didn't try to, complicate things for yourself. You got in the door. And then from there, you said, I'm going to reapproach them and I'm really going to scale this bad boy. And it's the easiest way to scale this because now you're not even just running one business. All of a sudden you're like, whoa, wait a second. I have like multiple streams of income, as they say, right? So that's going to be locations, which is pillar number 3. The fourth pillar is what I call scaling. Okay. So this is probably like the least talked about thing. And if you've been in business for a little bit or, any type of like a management position, you kind of always think this way. It comes down to efficiency. So the way you want to think about this, right? The way you want to think about this is actually going to be, all right, I've proved binary, proved yes or no. I've done more actions of the same thing. How can I be more efficient? So there's a few different ways you can do this, right? The old school method, I'm big on just talking to people. I'm old school, right? You can just talk to more people, right? But you're still limited in your day. If you got kids, you got family, you got baseball practice, you're like, man, I can only talk to so many places. And like physically, you're limited. There's only so many places around you. And nowadays, 2025 and on, we're actually in like a digital age. So if you're only sticking to like the physical space, you probably have problems. So there's a few different ways you can do this, right? I go over a few different like social media strategies. We call them like guerrilla marketing. Kind of like if you go on TikTok, somebody goes viral. There's different things you can do for that specifically. But one of the most efficient ways is actually running advertisements. And I know most people in here, including myself when I started, had no idea how to run ads. I'm like, what is this? Like, what's a CPL, cost per lead? I've never heard of that. But essentially, it's very efficient. And the reason why is because you have to ask yourself this question. Would it make more sense to talk to all these businesses yourself? Or would you put a dangler out there and have businesses reach out to you? I have a feeling it's probably going to be the latter where you're like, okay, cool. I'd rather have businesses reach out to me. So nowadays, with the advent of all these tech apps, all these AI, it can do everything for you. You could have your ads up and running within about like 4 minutes. I literally just had a mastermind call like an hour ago. I was breaking this down. I was like, hey, boom, launch new ads, have merchants reaching out. So the name of the game is scaling. And here's the reason why. The worst feeling you can have is this. And this happened to a lot of guys I know in crypto. They said, yeah, it sounds cool. And they bought a little and they just still had that uncertainty. So they just didn't buy more and more. So what ends up happening is years later, they're like, damn, that cheeseburger I bought, this thing I bought, this thing, you quickly realize like, man, I could have been doing X, Y, and Z. So it's the same thing with this. If you're going to start a business, you only start it with the belief that you're going to scale it. If you don't, stop, just waste your time, save your Amex points. Because you might as well just do the same thing you're doing. You're going to save yourself money. So in this space, I call it pillar number 4, but essentially you want to scale as soon as possible. So it comes down to efficiency. I typically like to run ads. I like to outsource some of the work to third world countries or other countries, like using call centers where they do most of the work for me. And I do the needle moving activity, which is going in person, talking to the merchant, build a relationship. Because again, this is a relationship game because you get referred over people. So essentially, 4 pillars, very simple. We talk about foundations, which is obviously going to be your business and your business bank account. Then you're going to have your actual backend processor, which is pillar number 2. Pillar number 3 is going to be your locations. And it's something no one talks about. Hey, is what it is. And pillar number 4 is going to be scaling, right? And what's going to happen, guys, I saw like there's some comment in here. It's very interesting. I see a comment like a crypto geek, basically. It's like wrong, this and that. Guys, I'm telling you right now, right? what you're going to find in business is actually very funny. You're going to find that the experts end up working for the guys that make it simple. And the reason why is because once you realize the game of business, you realize there's always somebody else that can do it for you. The rule of thumb is this, right? And it's the craziest thing. Money solves all problems. Revenue in your business solves all problems. So it comes down to speed, because the fastest time or the faster you can generate revenue for your business, whether it's the $5, $10, or $1,000, guess what you can do? You don't want to run ads? No worries. Hire somebody on Upwork or Fiverr. You don't want to find locations? No worries. Pay somebody for the leads. You don't want to form your business? No worries. Pay for some online service. There's always a way to do it. And it's counterintuitive because we're taught to save. Unless you have family that's already in business and you realize, cash flow and all this good stuff, it's counterintuitive, but you realize you just want to spend more money, because there's no difference between you and the 1,000 other people watching. There really isn't. The only difference is how much you can spend and how efficient you are. And those who master both of those will be the most successful, right? So very simple, down and dirty. This is exactly how you can start your crypto payment processing business. Now, if you do need help, you can send me a message. You can comment below. You can send me a bird or like a pigeon, wherever you want, because obviously I know a little bit what I'm doing. But essentially, this is probably going to be, I say probably, I'm very subtle with like things I say sometimes, going to be one of the biggest opportunities in 2025 leading to 2026. Don't be the person that says, fuck, I knew about that. I heard about that. I was like watching this live for like 2 minutes for a second. This guy was like, excited and all that. And I didn't take action. And again, it could be with my company. It could be by yourself. It doesn't even matter. There's so much opportunity out there. You think I can go from Medellin, Colombia to fly to Miami, to fly to Denver, to fly to all these businesses to talk to them myself? You're out of your mind. There's so much opportunity out there for this. You'd be almost irresponsible to at least look into it further. So that's going to be it for today's live training. Talked a little more than I wanted, but I'm just trying to get you as much education as possible so you can make an informed decision of whatever you want to do. If this sounds like something that's interesting in you, you can click the link in my bio, go to digitalresiduals.co, or just send me a message. Again, my name is Ganam Tekla, founder of Digital Residuals, former police sergeant, former Marine, whatever you want to call it, businessman, just somebody that's trying to make sure I'm successful, my tribe's successful, and the people around me level up too. Peace.